Mr. President, yesterday you shocked all of us and will never recover from that shock. You said nothing about international relations while we are living in a world defined by shifting global balance of forces. Shame on you that you said nothing about the genocide committed right in front of us because Olabaposo. You chose glory over the dying children and women of Palestine because you are scared to offend your coalition partners. President Mandela, a close friend of President Arafat, who you said we must celebrate yesterday, should be turning in his grave. And despite the fact that Cuba played a role in the struggle against apartheid, you never said anything about that. There is instability in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and South African soldiers are dying in that war, and you never said anything about that. There is a real threat of instability in the entire SADC region, and you never said anything about that. There is loss of life in South Sudan, but you had nothing to say about that. The BRICS Forum has been joined by additional countries such as Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Egypt, Argentina, Iran, and United Arab Emirates. And you never said anything about how South Africa should maximize these strategic relations to grow the economy. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, is agitating for a world war through its admission of Ukraine into NATO alliance, and you never said anything about that. This is happening while South Africa has discovered strategic oil and gas natural resources, which in itself, Minister Mantashe, it's a cause for global security, but your president said nothing about that. Even if the global balance of forces does not matter to you, there is nothing tangible you said about the high levels of crime happening in South Africa. In the past year, South Africa had more than 27,000 murder cases, and you never said anything about that. Are we being handed over to the imperialist takeover as South Africa? Mr. President, there are more than 300,000 students who have passed and attained their certificates, diplomas and degrees, but all universities and universities of technology, huge amounts of money. We must cancel student debt and introduce free decolonized education now. You claim to have created 2 million jobs through your presidential employment stimulus, but there are no additional 2 million jobs that were created since you took office in 2018. And if you want to argue this point, go and argue with Stats SA. Another issue we need to highlight is that Kusile Power Station added an additional 800 megawatt into national grid 2 weeks ago. You never mentioned anything about that. Instead, you chose to mention 256 megawatts of unreliable energy by independent power producers, which was plugged into the grid in the Northwest Province. We'll amend Section 25 of the Constitution in our lifetime to allow expropriation of land without compensation. South Africa, our country is being traded. We, the progressive forces, need to constitute an alternative radical agenda. Let us do everything in our power to rescue our country from being traded on a silver platter. We call on all workers' movement, civil society, religious leaders, and traditional leaders to reject this grand coalition led by DA under the pretense of the so-called government of national unity. We as the EFF will not form part of a factional and a decoy of the so-called national dialogue, which happens after the government has already committed budgets and programs to this agenda. We are not in the business of talk shows. We are in an agenda to realize through economic emancipation of our people, and no matter what it takes, we will never associate with the collaborators and the sellout agenda of the establishment.